Hi, my name's Marcus Ansems and I'm a Master of Wine. Today I wanted to talk about wine quality. Is there an objective way of measuring it? Are wine experts just fraudsters? Are humans actually any good at smelling? Do expensive wines always taste the best, or is everything just in the eye of the beholder? I'm just here in one of our young Pinot Noir vineyards, pretending to walk naturally while holding a selfie stick. And I've been thinking about wine quality. Everyone's probably heard this urban myth, the one where wine tasting's just junk science, that not even supposed wine experts can tell the difference between cheap wine and expensive wine, so why not just save your money and buy cheap wine? So I decided to do a bit of research on this and find out where all the conjecture comes from, whether in fact there's any truth to it. So it appears the most cited study is one done by a guy by the name of Robert Hodgkin. This was a 4-year experiment published in the Journal of Wine Economics in 2013. He seems to be a disgruntled winemaker, and he was querying why sometimes he got gold medals and other times not. In this study, wine experts, who were judges at the California State Fair, were asked to score wines out of 100. After presenting the judges with sneaky duplicate wines, they found that scores between the judges varied by up to plus or minus 4 points. And the better tasters, it varied only 2 points. Some judges were consistent, some judges less consistent. Okay, and this proves what? For me, the only thing the experiment shows is that they need to streamline the judges that are chosen for the event. Get rid of the ones that aren't consistent and keep those that are. This is done all the time at university sensory panels where statistics are gathered. Highs and lows are always discarded if they fall outside the bell curve. Not to mention, I've personally sat on a lot of wine judging panels where the term wine expert is very, very loose. Now, I'm not suggesting that I'm the best taster in the world, far from it, but I am a trained taster, and I would suggest that it's statistically impossible to taste and answer targeted questions of 36 wines blind over 3 days and successfully pass the Master of Wine exam purely by chance. I would say that the same goes for Master Sommelier exam. This is one reason why the MW and MS designations are so highly regarded. It's because it's bloody difficult to pass. I'm not saying that wine judging's easy, far from it. And I'm not saying that I agree that the great judging decisions occur after tasting hundreds of wines in a row, which often occurs in the bigger shows. All I'm suggesting is that blind tasting can be an important way to measure quality under the right conditions. There was also a large study done, published in 2008 by a guy by the name of Robin Goldstein. And he looked at 6,000 blind tastings, and it showed a positive correlation between price and enjoyment, but mainly in those that had some wine education. Okay, that sounds fair. Then there's this study that you may have heard about in 2001, where Frédéric Bouchet took 57 taste tested, poured them 2 wines, and then gave them taste descriptors to describe the wines. Turns out that the 2 wines were actually the same wine, but one was dyed red. A large portion of the taste testers tended to use red wine descriptors for the dyed wine and white wine descriptors for the white wine. But if you actually read the study, a sizable portion of the tasters were very, very accurate in their descriptions. Yet the study is widely cited, proving that wine experts can't even tell the difference between red and white wine. Once again, all this shows is that some wine experts are more accurate than others. The last large study I found was done in 2011, where Professor Richard Wiseman took a random selection of 578 untrained individuals in UK and presented them with wines under £5 and over £10. Only about half guessed the price points correctly, i.e. roughly by chance. So what does this say? Well, number one, I want to live in London because I'm not sure I could actually find a bottle of wine that costs less than £5 in Canada. That'd be $8.50 plus tax. Number two, I'm pretty confident that I could rig a tasting where $15 Canadian wines will taste better than $30 Canadian wines, simply by choosing great value wines ahead of time. This is actually one of the joys of buying wine, because there are bargains to be found. those little gems that punch far above their weight and price points. However, this would get exponentially harder if I had to do it with $15 and say $50 wines, or $15 and $100 wines. The third thing is, if you really want to enjoy wine, your appreciation goes up proportionally to the effort that you put into learning about it. Humans have got 6 to 7 million receptors in our nasal and retronasal systems, of which there's about 350 different kinds of receptors. The olfactory bulb in the forebrain connects to olfactory receptors in the nose and throat via the olfactory tract. Neurons from the olfactory bulb then link to the lower portion of the temporal lobe, as well as the amygdala, hypothalamus, cerebrum, and hippocampus, which may give a hint to why memory is so often linked to smell. There's also really big genetic differences between individuals in how they perceive certain smells. For example, I'm really sensitive to mercaptans, which you find in reduced wines. These are actually added to propane to give it the smell. Well, my wife is particularly sensitive to trichloroanisole, or TCA, which is a wine corktane. Both these compounds can be measured in the parts per billion range. So that would be equivalent of just a couple of drops in an Olympic-sized swimming pool. You would be able to smell it. Humans have actually got an underrated and incredible olfaction ability. Machines haven't even come close to being able to digitize and replicate our sense of smell. In fact, there was a great experiment done by a guy named Dr. Noam Sobel at UC Berkeley, and that he was able to show that humans could follow a scent trail of chocolate dragged over grass while blindfolded. And then they could follow a buried scent trail with high accuracy. After a few days of training, the only limiting factor was the speed in which the participants could crawl. That being said, humans are preference machines. We've evolved to pick the best smelling fruit, avoid rotten smelling food, choose the best smelling mate. So it only makes sense that we could pick out which wine smells and tastes best, right? But what is wine quality? How do we measure it? What are the components that make up wine quality? Everyone's heard of the 100-point score. In effect, scores are judged between 50 and 100 points based on quality. In Australia, we actually use a 20-point system, where 10 points are given to the palate, 7 for smell, and 3 for appearance. Personally, I often use a 5-star system. But regardless of the scoring system I use, the components of wine quality remain the same. And they are the ABCs. This stands for T for typicity. Is this wine typical for the variety, style, or region? B for balance. Is it balanced? Does the sweetness balance the acidity? Does the fruit balance the oak? Is there enough body to carry the tannins? Is there balance between savoury and fruit characters? C, is it concentrated? Does it have enough stuffing? Is the nose aromatic enough? Is it complex? Is there more going on? Does it show a sense of complexity of primary, secondary, and tertiary flavours? Lastly, A, is it ageable? Does it have the necessary intensity, complexity, balance, acidity, sweetness, alcohol, colour, and tannin to age well? In summary, I do think that humans have got the capacity to tell low quality wine from high quality wine. However, sometimes where it can get tricky is comparing wines that come from different countries that have different currencies and production costs. For example, a high quality, expensive Cabernet Sauvignon wine in South Africa might cost 300 Rand. If you convert that to, say, Canadian currency, that's about $20 Canadian, or say $15 US. What happens if I compare that wine to a cheap $15 US Cabernet Sauvignon? Are we comparing apples to oranges? I think we are. That being said, I believe there's still some correlation between price and quality, and we should be able to tell cheap wine from expensive wine. Lucky for me, I know that there are thousands of mispriced wine bargains out there. Otherwise, it wouldn't be nearly as much fun to go shopping for wine. In my next video, I plan to put my money where my mouth is and attempt to tell the difference between expensive and cheap wine in a blind tasting. Wish me luck.